Hello, this is Craig Mertens, Director of Product Education for Inktavo, the parent company of Graphics Flow, InkSoft, Printavo, and now SignTracker. Welcome to our Decorator Academy. Today we have a very special guest, Cole Lundstrom from Shirt Agency, and also the co-host of the Building Your T-Shirt Empire podcast. So Cole's let me on his podcast before. We had an absolute blast. So I decided to bring him on to Decorator Academy and have him share some of his expertise in all things technology. So I'm really excited to be teaching the class today. So Cole, what's your day going like?
It's good. Like we're running a 2,400 piece embroidery job, so that was a nice get for us. And then we've been doing some other stuff in like the DTF space, so kind of expanding our operations this last month.
So have you bit the bullet and bought a DTF printer yet, or are you still ordering transfers?
No, so we actually have like a new relationship. So we're going to start, we didn't actually buy the machine, but we have a relationship where all the production's going through one of our neighbors. And we're going to have that be live on the website literally this week. So people will be able to buy everything automatically without actually like having to process an order through us.
I love that. You know, technology, automation, making it easy for customers to purchase from you. It's such a critically important part of business today. So first question I want to ask you is, how did you get involved in apparel decoration and screen printing? And a follow-up question to that is, how did that lead to a podcast?
Sure. So, I mean, that's a span of 2 decades at this point. I learned how to screen print in the design class in my high school. So it was an ROP class. You were supposed to only take it 1 semester, but I just kept taking it over and over. So by the second semester, the teacher just let me do whatever I wanted in the shop every day. So I was a pretty legitimate manual screen printer by the time I was 18, 19. And then in college, I would kind of hustle up jobs. From there, I went to 2 actual shops. One of them was in West Hollywood that had like 4 autos. And then after like a brief stint with a brand, I got fired and I started Shirt Agency. So getting fired made me not want a boss. So I bought the domain at midnight, and it was 99 cents. Best 99 cents I ever spent.
You know, it's interesting. Everybody has a different journey into this industry, and I think getting fired is one of the greatest things that can ever happen to you.
Yeah,
you know, it kind of helps you to refocus and figure out what you actually really want to do. And Cole, would it be safe to say you're unemployable now that you've been an entrepreneurial business person running your own business?
I'm not unemployable. I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways, you know, like you just have a million bosses because of your customers. So like I could find a way into like some sort of bigger team if I thought it was an exciting opportunity, but I certainly am never going to like be looking for hourly pay the rest of my life.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you say that, because as a former business owner, used to say I was unemployable as an employee, and now I love being an employee. I feel like I've got the coolest job going, and I don't have to worry about bank accounts and hiring and firing, and get to really make an impact on our customers and our staff members. And so I kind of changed my tune with that. And, you know, I think you'd agree with me. This is a fun industry, don't you think?
Yeah, it is, for sure. This industry has like so many cool people doing so many cool things that it's really exciting to like be able to catch up on what they're doing, how it's evolving. That's why I like the trade shows so much. Like I end up going to like 3 or 4 a year at this point. Not necessarily to learn, but to network.
Totaling it up, I've done somewhere between 550 trade shows in my lengthy career. And,
wow.
You know, we had that span during COVID where, you know, just nothing was going on. And I just felt very detached from the industry. And, you know, maybe a little socially isolated too. And now I can tell you, for our viewers and listeners, trade shows are back. If you're not going to shows, or if you've kind of considered sitting it out, trade shows are definitely back. There's full participation from the vendors, the trade show associations like Graphics Pro and Impressions and Printing United have really got their education programs together. And there's just a general, like a good vibe in the shows again. And I commented to one of my former coworkers, it kind of feels like the good old days again. So I think it's healthy for our industry and healthy for the, you know, the state of our economy. Has that kind of been your experience too?
Yeah, I mean, ISS Long Beach, I think, was the biggest I'd ever seen it. It felt like, 2019 again, as far as like being a big event. And we even had rain and it still was packed. And Atlantic City was great too. Like that one was busy. And that's typically a smaller show, but like the floor was like, you're like weaving your way through humans. It was pretty heavy.
Yeah, for sure.
And especially like the seminars, we get a lot of good feedback and a lot of people participating and asking questions. It doesn't feel like stale at all. It feels like the industry is really thriving.
Do you feel like, the journey to getting involved in podcast, was that just something you decided to do, or was there something that led up to it?
The podcast started because I wanted to talk to people that didn't have a reason to talk to me. So specifically Danny, over at Bella Canvas, I was like, how do I have a private one-on-one conversation with Danny for an hour and a half with getting all his attention? And the answer was book a few podcasts with people I already knew, like Ryan, and then tell Bella Canvas like, oh, Ryan Moore already did the podcast. Now we want to do Danny. And then all of a sudden I like have Danny's cell phone number, have him talking to me one-on-one about business for an hour and a half. Like it was about networking more than anything else. It was never really about me like trying to do ad revenue or trying to get like attention. It was more just me wanting to be able to personally talk to people in the industry that were a big deal.
There's so many smart people in the industry that just, they're experimenters, they're trying things, and being exposed to that information, it's invaluable. And I'm always just kind of blown away by the creative things that people are doing in the industry. So before we're going to get started into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, I'm curious, your original vision for your small business and where you ended up. What was your original vision, and how did that evolve, and where are you at with it now?
The original vision, it was so hustly the first year that I don't think I had a vision. My vision was paying my own rent in the beginning, and it was just the only thing I knew how to start slinging. When we actually opened our building and the way we started marketing ourselves was, especially back then, Facebook ads and stuff were just starting to make people do a ton of online sales. In like 2013, 2014, it was like the wild west of Facebook ads making people a ton of money. And so we were ahead of that, kind of servicing brands that didn't have the ability to do massive outsourced runs. And they also didn't want to go to like the cheapest printer who didn't understand quality. So that was kind of the initial pitch, was like a retail ready product for smaller brands who maybe only need 250 units or something, as opposed to focusing on being really cheap volume printing, or being, like an outsourcer.
So, technology is rapidly, evolving, especially with the onslaught of DTF and now some hybrid digital screen printing processes. How do you see the future of screen printing, and how do you see direct to film transfers impacting that?
Oh, I think it's massively disruptive. I would hate to be selling autos. I feel like manual presses are going to become basically like a artisan craftsman kind of a thing. Like it's cool to do it, but there won't be any practicality to manuals at all. And then I think autos, it's going to be a volume game. So if it's a 2-3 color on an auto, it's still a better idea. But if you're talking about complicated art at all, I've heard of guys who own autos and they won't even set up a job for under like 200-300 units because everything below that is going DTF. They just don't even want to deal with it. And they have all the toys. They have the computer to screen for their, for their films instead of using actual plastic films. And they have the autos, and they're still like, oh, forget it. It's 75 pieces. I'm not going to burn a screen. I'm just going to have transfers show up the next morning or print them in a house.
It's interesting. I remember when DTFs first started coming out, I knew it was going to change things quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting seeing how people like yourself that are in the trenches reposition a DTF transfer as a premium decoration process almost better than screen printing. And I mentioned this to one of my old school screen printing buddies, and he was very offended by this.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I told him, I said, the reason that you guys are doing all this 8-color simulated process printing is really that's the only way you're going to get that kind of image onto a t-shirt in any kind of volume. I said, if you get the customer the choice between a full color digital image, bear in mind the artwork has to be set up right, but a full color digital, full color image, bright, vibrant, incredible detail, and that simulated process 8-color print, unless you're nostalgic and you just want something that looks like a 1990s concert shirt, you're probably going to pick digital. Have you seen that yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, and we've had customers like love for certain people, we don't explain what's going on. Especially, we get a 30-piece order and we just we just do it. We're not going to explain to them, like, would you like to use plastisol, whatever. So like we'll just throw a transfer on and we'll get complimented on how much better our printing has become. Just because it's so thin, it's so smooth, there's no visual halftones. So it's kind of shocking, like how quickly the industry is switching over to it. And now it's just going to be a price game because as more and more people adopt it, it's just a commodity, which that's the bummer, is we used to be able to pride ourselves on being the shop that could do a really beautiful 8 simulated process. And like that was how you set yourself apart, was like, we can do the hard job and they can't. Now everyone can do the hard job and they can do it in their apartment with a heat press. And that's really changing the way people approach like the whole craft.
It's absolutely a fact. It is going to somewhat commoditize the business because you don't have that barrier to make color simulated process anymore. Although there's still space for that. And I think of my own personal computer, our consumer habits of, I'm a t-shirt collector, right? And we all are to a certain degree if you're in this industry for a while. And I still have that fondness for that simulated process looking like concert shirts or wildlife photography because it doesn't have that heavy feel. But, you're right. Like our corporate logo stuff, being able to create just a cool graphic in full color with, our neat little Inktavo image on it and just, call up Supercolor and have them order transfers. And this shows I'm printing transfers this afternoon for all of our work shirts. I think I've got assigned to that because I'm one of the only people that has a heat press. And it just makes it so much easier for us. And with that being said, obviously there's a technology piece that's coming online now as people are, I see a definite trend where folks are using technology to scale as opposed to necessarily throwing more people at it. How have you implemented technology into your business and how is it, what are the big technology pieces that you're using and how has it positively impacted your business from a software and IT perspective?
Yeah, I mean, so ignoring like the e-commerce side of it, because we're going to be launching some like e-commerce stuff that will allow people to check out automatically. But for the most part, we have a traditional order request system going into Printavo, but everything is connected through Zapier. So all of the different notifications can talk to each other, update our team, and create summaries on the fly. And it saves us so much office work. It's a massive change in how much time we have to think about doing different tasks or copy pasting. So having just things connect through their APIs has been one of our biggest shifts over the last year and a half. And it completely changed how much repetitive office work we had to do. So that's been like the main focus, is trying to, even if we are taking a customer's order request, like a traditional print shop, we're doing it and processing it faster, even just on the office side before it even goes into production.
It's interesting you mentioned API and Zapier. API is, it's funny, talking to our sales team members and the customer brings up API because both InkSoft and Printavo have very powerful APIs. API is a way of connecting programs together so they communicate. It's a standardization so programs can exchange data. And anytime you're using API, you kind of have to know a little bit. It is required to have a little bit of knowledge of coding and depending really what you're wanting to do. But you also mentioned Zapier. Can you talk a little bit about Zapier, what it is and how it's impacted your business?
Yeah, so it's like a central hub that allows you to connect all your software, and then you can decide to do what are called zaps. So it'll be an automated connection. So for example, I have JotForm on my page, on my order request form on my website. Somebody fills it out and it does a zap where that order request form is automatically copy pasted into a new quote in Printavo. It simultaneously tells us in Slack, the sales team, hey, Here's a summary of what they requested. So if they want 5,000 shirts, we can pick up the phone instantly, or we can like get around to it on our normal day. So we're seeing, our sales team is seeing the opportunity at a glance. The Printavo has already auto-filled as much as it possibly can. And it's also sending out an automated email to them, thanking them for the quote, and that we're going to be sending them a finalized order, shortly. So all of that's firing off because of Zapier, and I didn't do any of it. I just put it in place. So when they fill out a form, all of those steps are now eliminated from our team, and we just come in and finalize the quote. We don't have to like sit there and process it naturally.
Did you find Zapier was challenging to learn, or did you pick it up pretty, bearing in mind you're pretty technically savvy, but how hard was it for you to learn? And do you think a regular non-techie person could learn it?
Yes, totally. So in November or so, they integrated their own version of an AI for it. So you can describe the Zap that you want, and it will try to do the Zap for you automatically. And then you can go in, it's all just like a clickable interface. There is no coding. So once you've connected things like your Printavo account or your Outlook account, whatever it is, now you can just select different things with drop-down menus. So it's a lot easier than actually working directly with an API. There's like no coding involved. Also, there's guys that you can pay that are like $99 an hour, and they'll do the things you want. But I think the way to use Zapier is don't try to make one unbelievable Zap that has 26 components. Instead, just like do something simple like your order form, copy paste all their shipping information, name, and quantities directly into a Printavo quote. That's all it does. And then you make another Zap that does another thing. Don't try to make like one insane workflow. Just do a whole bunch of little Zaps.
Printavo is the shop management software that's one of the brands under Inktavo, which is the parent company. So there's Printavo, shop management, InkSoft, e-commerce, graphics flow, graphics management, and Sign Tracker, sign shop management. And one of the things that Printavo can do, it has automations built in. It's similar kind of a concept where you add a status to an order and or status to your Printavo account that automates something. So for instance, like you do a quote and you want to automate a text message and an email to go out to the customer to say, hey, can you approve this and pay for it? So there's an automation and scripting language in Printavo, but what Zapier does is it lets you take that and do that same concept and integrate it with other software, which is remarkable. I'd say some people do some pretty creative things.
There's crazy things that you can do, and especially when you integrate like the ChatGPT API, we're having the ChatGPT like read people's emails and create summaries and throw it in. So somebody has their rambling 3 paragraphs, and like it's like some sort of maze for you to find what they actually want. And we're having the AI read the email, summarize it, and then pump out like they just want black t-shirt, 72 pieces, and the art is this. And those kind of summaries and stuff that it's capable of are amazing. And it's just one of those things where like it's going to get better and better and better.
Yeah, I agree. And, AI, has made my job much, much easier. I think of some of the tedious things that I've had to do in the past. Here's a good example. I do training for our new staff members, for you guys, clients, as well as for our partners. And so one of the things that we realized was kind of a gap in our training was just basic information on the different imprinting processes and how they work. And even, to the level of like videos showing the piece of equipment operational, I'd go into ChatGPT and just do a prompt, and say, hey, tell me everything you need to know about screen printing. I need it broken down by title, description, bullet points. I need to link to a video that demonstrates the entire process. And then I have a new tip for ChatGPT, put no yapping at the end of the prompt. And I do the prompt first to see how much information it dumps. And if I want to dumb it down, I just say, hey, please repeat with no yapping. And it really trims it up. But that kind of market research, I would have to have gone to how many different websites to gather that all together. And that process has took me 30 seconds. And then I'll paste it into a Google Doc, format it a little bit, and I'm done. And, and I can bust something like that out in literally an hour where it would have taken me a couple of days. of research probably collating that. And so I've seen, ChatGPT just have a massive influence, at least in my job, on product research and training. And this is going to be wild. You're going to probably be surprised by me saying this, but for marketing and copy, I've been using Google Gemini more frequently because I find it gives more human context in terms of, I was doing a sales training the other day, and I think the prompt was something like, create a process and strategy for training a sales team on how to position pain points to help increase closing rates, right? And so I put the prompt into ChatGPT, got some pretty decent out of it, but I put it into Gemini. I was like, man, this is perfect. So that's another tool that's available. Explain like API, what ChatGPT API is and how it connects. And I guess one way to explain it would be it creates action from the AI. So it actually, you can connect it and implement things and create actions. How are you using the APIs? And what are you paying? I don't think you pay like $20 a month for it, isn't it? It's not expensive.
Yeah, it's $20 a month for ChatGPT 4. And then the Open API, it's OpenAI API is what it's called. And you actually pay with tokens. But I'll spend like $1.24 for the entire month in tokens because they're fractions of a penny. And they want this scaled on enterprise levels. So me doing, 700 actions or something, it becomes almost no money. So it's totally worth it for us. And like I said, what I've been using it the most for inside of the business is it doing summaries. So it will read a full invoice, or it will read an automated email, and it will output cards that have the summary of the highlights for that person's job. So the person who has to make mock-ups will have a card showing the invoice link if they want it, but the summary will tell them all the things they need, including the artwork. They make a mock-up extremely quickly, send it to the customer, that gets approved, and then the screen people are given just the information that they need to know. Also, so the art person has only moved a card, but now the screen people are getting a summary of what they're going to be doing, how many screens they're going to need, and also it's being automatically notified to them. They don't actually have to have the art guy remember to tell them, or the art guy move a calendar or whatever. All he does is check his card off, and it moves down the flow. And so for me, the AI is mostly summarizing things. But in other aspects of our business, we're using the AI to do a ton of SEO, so blog pages, things that people may not actually read, but it's amazing for your Google search. So doing that kind of content that you should be doing, but it's a nightmare to write, it can pump that out really fast.
Evaluating your technology as a small business, what is your process? Do you do it annually? Do you do it on the fly? I mean, how do you evaluate your technology and create a technology strategy for your business?
I'm really into it, so I'll just be kind of always looking for something new, and then I start playing with it. And normally I've played with it a little bit before I actually show it to anyone, and then the team finally gets to see some sort of working finished version of it. So I don't do a yearly tech audit because I'm kind of just doing it every single week. On the paid one, it's really cool because you can do conversations. So I'll just turn it on in my car and do the conversation, and then kind of work out things out loud and have it give me bullet points of what I talked about, and also have it give suggestions as to what I'm working on. So it's an amazing just kind of sounding board. And if you want to, you can even train it on whatever data. So if you go in and train it on your old podcasts, or if you train it on marketing materials from a competitor, you can say okay, now we're going to use this style, this brand messaging, this stuff, but assign it to my business. So it's incredible at coming up with ideas. You don't instantly copy paste it and use it, but you get 90% there, and then you just kind of finish it off.
I think my best advice on kind of AI just in general is it's very intimidating, and especially of us folks that, I didn't see a computer until I was 17 years old. It was the first time I put my hands on a computer, where younger generations, obviously, you grew up with a supercomputer in your hand with a cell phone. So it can be pretty intimidating seeing this rapidly evolving AI landscape. I always tell people, start off with just the free ChatGPT account, or Google Gemini is just built into Google. If you have a Google account, just type in Google Gemini. And what I do is I create a shortcut. If you go into Chrome and just say create an app shortcut, it just basically creates a shortcut where it shows up like an app. And what I do is I start trying things, and I see I'll take a novel approach and see what kind of problems it can solve, or different prompts, and just to see how kind of the general landscape, how it works. And that way it doesn't have to be super intimidating. Then you kind of start going into next level and looking at some of the other AI tools. But I think just having AI as part of your repertoire, I think it's not only important today, but I believe it's going to be essential moving forward, because you're going to be competing with the people that are super savvy about this. And a good example is, like your Google business listing, right? So Cole, you live in a populated area, and it's probably hard to get ranked higher, but you can use Google to provide you with a strategy, or you can use ChatGPT or Google Gemini to provide you with a strategy that's going to teach you how to elevate your Google search results so you're at the top of the list, and that's free advertising. You don't pay anything for that. And if you're fortunate enough to, double-edged sword, if you live in a rural community, you don't have as big a population base to draw on for clients. But if you want to be number one in your local Google search results for screen printers or embroiderers, ChatGPT is going to get you there.
And it did. I'm number one for Huntington Beach. Their shop's way bigger than me next door, and they're like number 6. And it's just a game of giving Google what it wants, doing a ton of keywords. What I've found, if we talk about keywording and stuff for a second, I found that people's websites will say Jimmy's Tees, let us know what you want. We print, and then that's it. But they never actually wrote the keyword like custom T-shirts in Fullerton, California. They never wrote what people are searching. So Google can't feed them. So for us, our live printing page is normally in the top 3, depending on your keyword search. It's normally family industries and live screen printing or liveprinting.com and me. And it's basically all of us just doing an amazing job with keywording those specific search words. And then below that, there's just kind of no one offering it. But I'm assuming that all over the country, guys would gladly show up with heat presses and book an event. But because they're not creating the content, Google's not going to feed Jimmy's Tees to somebody searching for event printing. They never created something for Google to actually share.
It's interesting, as we adopt all this technology, and, we have staff members, it's one thing to know how the technology works internally, and you're a student of the game. You go and get under the hood and figure out how it all works, just like what we're conversing about the Google search engine optimization. But how do you get your team up to speed? Because not everybody's technically savvy, but they kind of have to be on the same page if we're implementing technology. What has been your approach to training your team on technology and cross-training them?
To me, if I'm making their life harder, we need to get rid of the technology. So they should think that it's now easier because of something I'm implementing. That was the idea with the card system, is I didn't even want them going in and reading invoices and trying to figure out all this information. I just wanted them to have nothing but an app. They look at their day's tasks. They've got their cards that they need to move along. And then everybody can, if you want to, you can see everyone's tasks in the cards, or you can just look at your column and just be like, this is all I'm doing. I'm just doing a mock-up. And then the screen guy's like, I'm just making these 32 screens. And then the printer is like, I'm only printing 6 jobs today. And so dumbing it down and creating little micro categories has worked really well. I've never believed in training everyone to be me. If I train somebody to know how to print and know how to do screens really well and know how to do sales, and then they're running around in circles, that person is not going to be a good employee. But if I have a guy who knocks out my screens consistently and quickly, and they're always ready, and there's never errors in the burning, that's the kind of task I want somebody to be implementing. And so for him, he doesn't really need to be trained on technology. He just needs really clear, simple technology put in front of him.
It's interesting. We look at, the kind of the landscape for e-commerce, And, it's funny when, I own a company called Digital Art Solutions, which was a content creation and graphic software company. And I sold that company to InkSoft, and we rebranded as Graphics when we went to the cloud. And then we became part of the Inktavo family and merged up with Printavo and now Sign Tracker. And honestly didn't really know that much about e-commerce. I had kind of surface level understanding of it. Now I have a very deep understanding of it because that's part of my job. But what dawned on me was like, wow, if you don't make it easy for your customers to buy from you, if you don't provide them with an Amazon-like experience, they have a lot of options. And I think one of the fallacies that oftentimes people make is I'm going to be the next custom make. I do a little research and maybe go and ask ChatGPT how much money custom make spends on SEO and advertising a year. It's kind of an eye opener. Same thing like with rush order tees, you see all the kind of usual suspects. But leveraging e-commerce into your business isn't just about selling online. It's also about providing your customer a streamlined, smooth, and convenient buying experience. What is your strategy? I know you're shifting a portion of your business to e-commerce and this new concept you have. But what do you see as an effective strategy for an apparel decorator for e-commerce?
It depends on who you're serving. So especially with DTF, we are going to be having a front end where somebody can just click on a black shirt, upload their art. It'll have the generator, where they're basically making their own mock-up. They press submit, and then we're going to have the order ship out in 4 days. So that'll be kind of like that, kind of that print, what is it? Print Ninja service that they're coming out with. So that kind of experience will be really easy. That being said, I also know people whose website is terrible because they have humongous clients that have entire merch lines. And if you have a client who's going on tour and they're going to do 60,000 units with you and you have to update for each tour, they probably don't even want to upload their art through a mock-up generator and stuff like that. They don't want to do an e-commerce checkout. In that case, it comes back to invoicing and also probably doing some sort of inventory management tools, as opposed to just doing that direct-to-consumer front end. So it depends on who you're serving, because some humongous places online, they look like they don't even exist, but they just have massive contracts.
Yeah, it's interesting, having to develop this deep understanding of our InkSoft platform. One of the things that InkSoft's had in the platform for a very long time is what we used to call it internally end user shoppers portal. And really it's just the customer's account. It's their portal where they can go in and see their orders, what's in progress. They can check in and see, what's the status of my order, what artwork I uploaded, anything I designed or saved in the designer. It's this thing that's just existed. And, to me, it's like the best ideas come from customers. And I had this customer share with me what they were doing. He actually had gone through 100 InkSoft stores and in a very short period of time. And I asked him, I said, dude, how did you go through 100 InkSoft stores active right now in 2 months? He goes, I set up a store for every one of my customers, whether I'm selling through the store or not. And I process my invoices through the proposals tool in InkSoft. And that way everything is in the customer's portal, so they can go in there and see where we're at. And they can see what artwork, they can initiate a reorder through it. They can make a reorder or initiate one through their portal. And I was thinking about how smart that was. And the funny thing he said to me was, he goes, and I don't really want to talk to these people anyways. It says, I don't want to be bouncing back emails, back and forth, phone conversations, super inefficient. Yeah. And then I just looked at him and I said, hey man, you kind of missed the point here. And he's like, what? And I go, they don't want to talk to you either.
Yeah.
They just want an easy way to buy. And I think where people kind of lose sight of e-commerce, like, hey, I'm going to be the next. No, I'm not going to be the next custom ink unless you're going to, really spend some dollars. What you want to do is make it easy for people to buy from you. And by doing that, you also make it easy on yourself. And that allows you to scale, so you don't have to necessarily staff up to do that. You're just using technology to help you staff up. What are your thoughts on staffing up versus leveraging technology?
I don't like staff. It's it's extremely hard to have somebody perform on the same level that you're expecting of yourself, and it also can get extremely costly. So when I think about I'm going to hire a guy and pay him $70,000 because he's going to be an office salesperson, I'm now expecting that guy to bring in $300,000-$400,000 in sales by himself, because by the time I pay his salary and we have some sort of margin on the products he's, actually selling, he has to do huge numbers to just justify even being there. Whereas I could spend $70,000 on technology that just accepts orders because people like the experience, and I feel like it might actually go a lot further, because unless you already have those really good contacts, starting from scratch as a salesperson in a company is extremely hard. Whereas having an automated order flow where it's just good marketing leading into a good funnel, leading into an e-checkout, that's just so easy, and people are used to it. Like, you don't necessarily have to talk to anyone to order a t-shirt now. And Sticker Mule has a really cool, I think it's just Sticker GPT. It's inside of ChatGPT, but you talk to it. It generates the artwork with AI. It gives you multiple variations, and then you just press buy inside of the chatbot, and you have stickers showing up at your door in like 72 hours.
And I think a lot of times with technology, being able to, it's a little intimidating. You see these big high-tech companies doing these amazing things online. And yeah, it's not reasonable for somebody, a small business, to do things at that scale, but there's lessons to be learned there, and pulling out some of the micro lessons that you can actually implement in your business. And I think it's the best form of R&D, right? It's not research and development, it's rip off and duplicate. You're just borrowing the parts that you can use from these successful businesses. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and a lot of this software, like I've talked to people who did in-house software for their print shops, and they spent sometimes well over $1 million to do something that was already on the market for $300-$400 a month. So, like, to build their own versions when there's things coming off the shelf that are very similar seems a little crazy to me sometimes. I know that they have like proprietary features that they wanted to have, but it is true that the best ideas do get duplicated, and you start seeing, people basically cloning the best software. That's kind of the thing that you see at trade shows, is like when you walk around the trade show booths, there's a bunch of software companies, and you're like, oh yeah, I've had that for 3 years. I've seen that before. And they're like, oh, it's our new feature. So there is like a lot of repetition in the software. So you don't necessarily have to be high level to build it yourself when so much stuff is available to you. Two-part
question. How important is approving art, and how do you manage art approvals?
So for volume printing, it's very important. And then for DTF stuff within e-commerce, we're not going to do it at all. So it'll be kind of two paths. For a volume screen printing job, we have PDFs made with all the details, all of the sizing information. It's mocked up on the actual item, not just like one of those stupid cartoon templates. I don't know why people use those anymore. We just pulled all the actual items from like Alpha Broder and use their images. So we get all those approvals, then we get it approved by the customer. We mark it in our system, and it goes on to press, and we have a press photo approval as well. So if they panic and they hate the lemon yellow, and it needs to be more of a golden yellow because they didn't understand what Panto they picked, we can fix it before they freak out and have 500 shirts that are the wrong yellow.
But I'm a huge fan of utilizing technology for art approvals, and there's so many variables now. It's not just what the artwork looks like, it's color correction, imprint location, imprint side. All of those different variables are critical. And I'll talk to customers that don't really have an approval process. And, the question is, hey, how often are you guys having a sample sale or donating goods to the local charitable organization? Because for a small business, absorbing the cost of a misprint, it has, in my opinion, has two really super bad outcomes. Number one, you could lose a customer. And number two, you're eating that profit, and you're probably having to reproduce the messed up order at your cost. Yeah. So it's really almost like a triple whammy. But just out of curious, do you ever lead with artwork, or is everything pretty much the customer already knows what they want? But do you ever lead with an art work, get people ideas like, hey, these are the kind of things that you can do?
Yeah, I mean, if they have that kind of attitude about it, where like they are looking for suggestions. We've never really been like a design studio. I know a lot of print shops see themselves kind of as like a marketing design firm who also prints. We'll like help with art or we'll clean up art, but we're not really focused on like pushing that forward. And our best clients, they'll need 2,000 units. They already have graphic designers on staff. They already they have a large run, or if we're doing something for like a tour merch, they don't need my opinion at all. They already are selling all the units.
We had a conversation before when we were kind of warming up, and you said, I think probably the only AI art generator that's doing it by the rules is, in terms of copyright infringement, is Adobe. Can you explain that?
It's messy. So things like Midjourney and Dolly's the one that's inside of ChatGPT. They were trained on like the open web, and that includes just like Reddit posts. So like random people uploading their art that they draw, or large famous artists that are on Google image search. All of that was their training data, which means that Midjourney can do unbelievable generations, and Dolly's getting better and better, and it's starting to work to like even create fonts in a good way. But you took data that you didn't have any control or copyright claim to, and then you are now like reworking it into this new thing that's obviously like it's a generative thing. It's like if I just like took Printavo and released Coltavo that was a clone, but I like changed the colors, and then I refused to pay Inktavo any money. And so I think there's going to be a lot of legal issues that we'll see kind of play out, and people will have to figure out how training data will either be paid for, or if there's going to be any like kickbacks to like the original artists in some way. But Adobe, they own Adobe stock. So all Adobe generations are trained on Adobe stock images with their 100% license. So Adobe, any AI stuff you're making inside of it, whether it's in the Photoshop generative fill, or if you're using, they have like Adobe Firefly, right? All of that stuff is trained on things that they had complete power to train on. So that's why I feel like they're the only like truly legal and ethical option at the moment. But it doesn't mean the other people will go away. They may just have to figure out some lawsuits.
So are you, I mean, I know you're automating some of your marketing processes, but have you guys ever considered using virtual assistants to do some of this low-level communication with your customers?
I have done virtual assistants in the past. And Gavin, who does the podcast with me, he's like the virtual assistant king. But for me, I end up having, I guess, higher expectations than I should for it. And I have found that I can make most things not actually require much input. So, if we, like, let's say we land 6-7 orders per day that come in, that's honestly not that much work. It's just not. And so if we're knocking out those sales and the emails are getting sent out and the quotes are getting sent out, I'd rather have it be in-house and controlled than have like a random VA say something bizarre to a customer who's now confused. And I guess I'm maybe kind of bad at training people. And I could have done a better job with that. But the VAs we had in the past, I didn't get like the consistency, and I would like go in and read their emails, and I'm like, this email is awful. It's like, it's weird. I'd rather have a templated auto email than some weird, awkward thing where they're trying to say things they don't really know about. So yeah, I try to make things as automated as possible to try to limit repetitive tasks.
So what is the number one recommendation that you would give to somebody that's looking at technology about adopting new technology, and as it relates to our world of apparel decoration?
I would say just start building stuff as fast as possible and don't think that there's one solution. Like we build a lot of our stuff on top of Printavo, but it's been years of constantly moving that forward, as opposed to us like one day 100% everything works. So I would say the number one thing with the technology is just start today and then tomorrow do more and then the next day do more, as opposed to trying to look for a perfect solution. There is no perfect solution, and it will always be evolving. So don't be afraid of it and get left behind. Instead, just keep playing with it.
That is some very sound advice, and I'm going to take your advice on that in my own technology habits. So Cole, thank you so much for coming on Decorator Academy. I really appreciate it. It's been fun getting to know you over these last few years. I have a suspicion we'll probably be doing some work together in the future in terms of teaching and instructing this world of apparel decorators. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.